from the Ticats Audio Network, this is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
If there was any doubt, Dustin Crum is the Redblacks starting QB and could be for a long time. Commissioner Randy Ambrosie is looking for a little love for potential East Coast expansion. Are running backs underappreciated? And who is your early season MOP? These issues and more are up for debate right now on the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. I'm your host, Bubba O'Neil. 3 Down fans, you've landed, as I always say, on the top CFL podcast where the best analysts, columnists, and broadcasters say their mind. This week, he joins us from Regina, and he is the editor at the Leader Post. Taylor Shire, a regular, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm not officially sure, or at least sure, if he's officially signed his retirement papers, but we're certainly happy to have him as our co-host on Gameday on the Ticats Audio Network. He is Mike Daly. What's up, Mike?
Hey, Bubs. Thanks for having me. Excited for it.
Hey, and you know what? It's time to sound that rookie alert. This happens every once in a while. Checking in from Calgary sports leader, Sportsnet 960, the better half of the big show. We know the other half very well from the Fan 590 in the old days. A big welcome to Matt Rose. Matty Rose, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Happy to be here.
All right, guys, let's do this. I don't know what you guys thought about it. I'm going to just call it a second Crum back. I mean, has it appeared to you guys that the Redblacks have found their starting quarterback, Taylor?
You know what? I was just wondering where this guy came from, and obviously being the fourth option this year that the Redblacks have had to come to. Why was he not the guy, to back up Masoli to start the season, and even to get that start ahead of Arbuckle? It just seems to me like Crum is this guy who turns it on when the game lights are on, and maybe he's an okay practice player and is okay during scrimmages, but then when the game is on, he just seems to have that it factor. So not a lot of quarterbacks have that much success and that much, I guess, just crazy sort of comebacks and knack for winning in overtime especially. So it's a good thing for the CFL to have a guy like this come up through the ranks.
Mike, the Ticats have the Redblacks next. I'm sure they are scanning the film from not only his first appearance, but he seems to have improved in what is his coming off his second start.
Yeah, I think what was most impressive about it too was, Calgary, they were kind of waiting for him to run around a little bit, right? And they were trying to hold him in the pocket. And he made some pretty big-time throws from standing in that pocket. The Redblacks were doing a pretty good job at going 2 back, right, protecting him a little bit more. But he made some pretty good throws in that pocket that were impressive, right? And I think if he's going to keep this success going and the Redblacks are going to keep their success going, he's going to have to do that a little bit more. But it was impressive because, Taylor, like you say, you don't really expect that from these young QBs that are stepping in. And he's kind of shown he can make some of those big-time throws.
Matt, is this just something short-lived, or are we in for a long-term success with the Cruminator?
Oh, man, I think that this is a guy who could certainly have success in this league. We've seen that he can use his feet to escape the pocket if he needs to, but I was really impressed with the way that when there was pressure or late in the game, he had taken a couple of hits. He had that one where he lost his helmet. He took a hard hit from Cameron Judge, making a nice throw, and it didn't seem to shake him. Some guys will maybe get a little bit out of position or get some happy feet, start making some throws that you probably shouldn't have once that starts happening. And to me, the way that he was able to just keep building on that game, even when things weren't going well, that was ideal for the Redblacks. And obviously they were able to get the win. Now that's twice that he's been able to kind of lead that group to wins in games that they weren't supposed to get victories. So not only does he have the attention of the league, but you got to think that his teammates in that room now have a lot of belief in this guy. I think he's someone that could have a lot of success in this league with just the ability to not only run, but he's shown that he's a more than capable passer as well.
Taylor, the funny thing is, early season prognostications, we always laugh at what that means when we're talking about what these teams are going to do in April and March. It was kind of believed that Ottawa were kind of the bottom feeders, maybe the bottom feeder of the East Division. Maybe this team's better than we think.
Well, they have a lot of talent. The only thing that I'm kind of concerned about is the sustainability of Crum's play. Can he continue to, make those plays using his legs, using his arms, and take the hits that he's been taking over a whole entire season. I mean, obviously he's been protected enough that he's not taking sack after sack in Ottawa, but when he uses his legs and gets out of the pocket, he's going to take some hits, and is that sustainable over a long period of time? But it certainly is good for the CFL, like I said, and good for Redblacks fans to have some hope after, it didn't look all that good for them heading into the season, especially with Masoli coming or starting the season late and then obviously being hurt right away.
Mike, that's a funny thing because I know you love, even to this point, still breaking down tape. I mean, can you break down tape and really end up stopping a guy or coming up with schemes with a guy, or does he just his continual development? I mean, how does that all balance off?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, it's still, you got to do the same thing that Calgary was doing. It's just you got to keep him from running. He's most effective when he is running, right? But what Ottawa is also getting a lot of help from is their defense. Right, so yes, Crum's playing lights out, but the Ottawa got some turnovers, pick six, right? They're very good against the run. We saw that time after time again. So that defense is really, really helping them out. But I think when you look at, Dustin Crum and you're trying to break it down and how you're going to defend him is keep him in that pocket and see if he can keep making these big-time throws, right? And don't even let him escape out of the pocket to run necessarily, but not even escape out of the pocket to throw, right? Keep him in there and say, okay, let's see how well you can do. Let's see if we can turn you into a Trevor Harris or a Peyton Manning, those type of guys that don't move ever, right? Let's see if you can do that. And I think that's what you're going to see as this goes on is those kind of defenses against Dustin Crum.
That's the thing we always talk about, Matt, especially with these young quarterbacks, is the guys that are just too eager to run and that they have to throw. But he continually has shown a good balance of it all. So, it's funny with this team when they lost Masoli, when they lost Adams, when Arbuckle never, worked out. I mean, there was kind of you kind of feel sorry for the Ottawa Redblacks, but I don't know if anyone's feeling sorry for that team any longer.
No, I don't think so at all. It's crazy. You look around the CFL, there's been, 4 teams that have already suffered losses to their starting quarterback, and you could argue that what we've seen from Dustin Crum has been the most impressive of guys who have come into his starter's role, grabbed it by the reins, and not looked back. And what you mentioned about the way that he's kind of been able to stand in the pocket, he sees pressure in his face, but he doesn't give up on going through his reads. He doesn't just take off really quickly. I thought the Stampeders did a pretty good job of keeping a guy spying Dustin Crum, but even when they did that, and guys like Cam Judge and Julian Hauser, who are really good at that type of play on the defensive side of the ball, he was making them look average at it when he escaped and kind of got into that second level and started to use his feet. So he's dynamic. He can do a little bit of everything right now, passing downfield, running out of the pocket, you name it. And unfortunately for the Stamps, they've just the latest victim of kind of that tape that everyone's going to be watching for this guy moving forward.
Well, fellas, we've hit this sort of 33% of the season right now, and I know there are a number of coaches out there that like to break up the 18-game regular season in a matter of 6 games and into the 3 quarters, or at least the thirds. I'll come right to you, Mike. Right now, as it stands, if we're looking on a league-wide basis, who's your MOP right now? Who's been the most outstanding player to you?
Well, listen, if you had asked me before this, if we had a conversation before this, I would stand up here and say I was completely wrong about Chad Kelly, but you kind of have to say it's him right now, right? They're undefeated. AJ Ouellette, I like him as well if it's a 1A, 1B type thing, but when you look at the Argos, they're just so much more dominant, and they are showing that they're more dominant than every other team. And Chad Kelly, like we're talking about Dustin Crum right now, stepped in early in the season to start, and I don't think anybody really expected this much success from him, right? Everybody knew he was pretty good, but so I would have to say Chad Kelly is right now. Now, maybe we have this conversation after every third, but right now, the way the Argos are rolling, it's him. I agree.
Is it Chad Kelly, Matt, for you?
I think it has to be. One of the things that makes it, I don't want to say obvious, but Winnipeg isn't what they've been the last couple of years. They've been solid, but they haven't been up to the same standard that we're used to. I think the only other guy that really belongs in that conversation would be Vernon Adams Jr., and they've had a bye, and then he got hurt in this last game, so you kind of wonder what the future is going to be like for him. right now, based on the body of work, you'd probably have to go to Chad Kelly, who remains the only undefeated quarterback in the CFL right now.
Taylor?
Yeah, Kelly's, I think, would be the unanimous guy for the award if it was handed out today. Quarterback on an undefeated team. He's played well so far and put his team in a position to win every week. So I think he's really the, no doubt, early season MOP favorite.
Well, Mike, I think this is hilarious because, I mean, you're a defensive guy. You spent many years on defense, not even in the Canadian football, your whole life. And what about a guy like Matthew Betts? I mean, he's in the double digits in sacks right now. He's on pace for 30 sacks.
Hey, Bubs, I got used to this a long time ago. Anytime you hear MOP, all that means is quarterback. And so I would love to throw him in there. I'd love to put a bunch of other people in there. But anytime you hear MOP, I know that it goes to the quarterback unless Matthew Betts can put up 30 sacks. I think he's going to have a hard time getting to number one of that.
We'll talk about the most outstanding Canadian then.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
right? Most outstanding Canadian, I think he's the easy answer for that award right now.
Yeah, the way absolutely. He really has been strong, really, and leading that defense. And you're right, guys. I mean, it is hard not to look at a team that's undefeated right now. Though I'll stick with that BC Lions. I mean, who knows what's going to happen there with that team? And you're right, Vernon Adams might have been a guy that we consider that, but then going up against Kelly, he has that 6-pick game that might have ruined it there, Matt.
Yeah, 100%, right? And that's the thing. Like, everybody else has a little bit of a blemish on them along the way. Whereas you look at what Chad Kelly's done, just spreading the ball out. And like, I looked at that Toronto receivers group to start the season, and it's solid. You know, no DeVaris Daniels well. Curly Gittins Jr. had a good season. DeMonte Cox, he's come out of nowhere and been really strong. But when you kind of looked at who he was going to have to work with around him, I don't know if we expected Chad Kelly to come in and hit the ground running, even after watching him in the Grey Cup. So that's the biggest thing for me, is he's been able to kind of build on it. Vernon Adams Jr., like you mentioned, the 6-interception game, and that's the one where you're going head-to-head as well. So if anything, it's got even more of a kind of basis, more pull on what the decision is going to be in the end. But right now, it's hard to go anywhere except for Chad Kelly. Vernon's been solid, but we don't know how long he's going to be out, and that's the biggest thing for me. He's also done really good with a bunch of receivers that maybe weren't as highly billed as last season. Like Lucky Whitehead's been kind of quiet, but he's been really solid. There's been a lot to like from some of the quarterbacks who have been healthy this year. Vernon and Chad have both been really strong all year long.
Taylor, I mean, I know you're kind of closer to the situation, and I know in boxing they always say about, the champion's never dethroned until he's knocked out. What's going on with Zach Collaros?
I think they're still good, Winnipeg as a whole, but they're just not great anymore. I think they're just getting a little bit older, a little bit slower. They're still a good team, and I think they're still the favorites to come out of the West when the playoffs do roll around. They just have the experience of doing that in the playoffs and turning it up when playoff time comes. I just don't know if they're going to be that dominant team in the regular season. Because you see even Calgary takes a step. They lost, obviously, but they took a step forward with their offense on Sunday. And Saskatchewan, I think, is still kind of going through some, I don't want to call it, they're being patient with Mason Fine. And I don't think they're necessarily going to string a bunch of wins together because they want to be patient with a young quarterback. And the urgency to win now is certainly high on the coach and general manager in the last year of their contracts. But with a quarterback, I think they do have to be patient with him. And then you look at BC, if Vernon is out for a long time or if he comes back right away, I still think Winnipeg is the favorite to win out of the West. And I still think Collaros probably would be the West MOP at this point of the season if Vernon Adams is out for a few weeks at least. If VA comes back right away, I still think he's the favorite, but Collaros is certainly still having a decent season so far. But just not what we are used to, I guess.
True. All right, guys. On the Ticats Audio Network, on our last contest with the Argos and Ticats, Commissioner Randy Ambrosie made an appearance on the Ticats Audio Network, and one of the questions that myself and Andy Fantus talked to him about was East expansion once again, which has been a hot topic and something that we've kind of been back and forth on for 3 years or so, I'd say. So here's a quote. We've had conversations with groups that are very interested in owning that franchise, but now what we need is that region to pull us in the rest of the way. Mike Daly, what does that statement mean to you?
That just means ticket sales. They need to see when they have these games that are going out east, and like Touchdown Atlantic is. They need to see people come out there, and they need to see the buzz around the game, and they need to see the ticket sales, the merch sales. They need to see that it's worth it to bring a team out here, and for those people that are interested in buying that team, they need to see that, yes, there will be a sustained amount of fans that are going to come, watch the game. It's going to be worth my time, worth my money, worth my effort. And that's exactly what that means. That means, hey, CFL fans, come out to this game so that we can get this CFL East expansion. Unless somebody else has, some inside information that I don't, that's exactly when I see that quote. That's exactly what I think.
Your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, that's kind of where it lands right now, right? It's just been wait and see for the last little bit. You kind of look around at different stadiums and look at different crowds, and it's one of those things that in a perfect world you would have 10 teams, you would have even number, you could make the schedule a little bit less kind of lopsided, get rid of buys early season. It would be fantastic, but over the last few years, it doesn't feel like there's been any traction moving forward. And as much as I would love to see a CFL team out there, it also feels like if the fans really wanted it, by now it probably would be out there. So once again, you're facing one of the harder tasks for the CFL, in my opinion, which is bringing in new fans when other sports are so readily available with streaming and with everything else that's available to you right now. It's hard to get people as new fans into your sport. Now, we've seen people come in and, oh my goodness, the CFL is so exciting and I love it and it's the perfect kind of reprieve when there's no NFL. But right now, it just feels like this team is kind of stuck in the mud as far as getting over that hump and getting back to be popular and cool and something that a lot of people in Canadian cities want to go see. And until then, I just think it's going to be hard to kind of muster up, like Mike said, ticket sales, even social media engagements and all those types of things from further out east. I would love to see it. It would be amazing for the league, you would like to think, but I just wonder what next steps can be taken, must be taken before eventually there is this 10th team out east.
So go ahead, Taylor.
I was just going to say, to me, it's really about government funding and support, and obviously, as Mike said, that comes from the fans to put the pressure on the government and to vote in favor of building a stadium. I think right now, if a private owner came in and put up a whatever $200 million stadium, $300 million, whatever it might be, I think, and then bought the team, I think they would have the team because they would be the ones taking the heat if no fans show up or whatnot. But I think it ties within that government support and where a facility or a stadium could be built, and how much support and how much money is the certain levels of government willing to put in, and how much is the ownership willing to put in. But I think it does, so you boil that back down a little bit, you need support and pressure from the fans to get that facility up. We've seen it in other expansion markets across any sport, right? They have sort of these season ticket drives, and okay, we've sold X 20,000 of season tickets, and now we're going to build this facility and get this team. So I think it does start with the fans, and then I think there's a little bit of government, and then obviously you need an owner who is willing to, put their neck out and put a bunch of money down too.
Daly, is that what he's saying? Show us the money, because it seems to me every time the CFL goes out east, they sell out those games. Now, mind you, I know people would argue to me that, these are 15, these are 10,000 seat stadiums, but there does seem to be a buzz out there every time this Touchdown Atlantic. I don't think the CFL would keep running out this Touchdown Atlantic if it wasn't a big success. What else can these people do?
Yeah, I think, Taylor kind of hit it right on the head, is it's trying to get that government funding or somebody to help out a little bit, because what it is almost like a marketing ploy every time it goes out there, right? And it's like, as much as we can keep putting this in people out there, in their face, to get them out there, to get more and more buzz, I think the better it can be. The problem I had with it is before COVID, I feel like it was a huge topic of conversation. It was getting really, really close. They were talking about it constantly. Even the players internally, when we were in the locker room, were like, okay, who's going to Halifax, right? Which one of us is going to go play out of Halifax? See you there, see you there. I feel like it was a lot closer at that point. And then obviously with the suspension of the league for a little bit, now it just seems like it's almost a secondary topic to talk about, right? And hopefully it can get back to that same point, and there is that buzz that's around it, but right now it just seems like it's kind of fallen off a little bit, and all it is like marketing to get out there each and every time.
Matt, does this need to happen?
Need to happen? It's a hard thing to say. Like, I think the league can still survive just going with 9 teams. They have done it forever. But I think that there's almost like a notion of like, oh, you have an odd number of teams. Like, how am I supposed to take this league seriously? Like, I've talked about it with kind of my friends around here before, but like, I don't know what the marketing was for the NFL when finally it was able to be seen a lot more predominantly up here in North America. I feel like that seriously cut into the Canadian game, and to a point where, oh, the Canadian game isn't cool anymore. It's like the little stepbrother to the NFL, and I don't know when it got to that point or how it got to that point, but shaking that stigma has proven to be extremely difficult. Like, I go to Stamps games all the time, and you're not seeing the younger fans who, for lack of a better word, like the cooler people who are around the game, who are going to stands, who are sitting in the crowds and watching the games. And that's the biggest thing. You have a fan base that continues to age out. I think that if you get a team out east, that's great, but the biggest thing is you have to have people that are going there, because if you go out east and you have another team and all of a sudden you're looking at half full stands, 60% full stands in another building, I don't know if that's necessarily building the league in the right direction. Plus, all of a sudden, the league has a lot of talent, but you're spreading that talent out against another team amidst other leagues starting to pop up all the time. And, we could talk about the longevity of other leagues down south until we're blue in the face, but it doesn't change the fact that other people are trying to start these new leagues, and they are attracting players. Like, I think of Darnell Sankey, who was one of the top linebackers in this league last year. Stamps would have loved to have him back, but went down south. Other teams would have loved to have him. Went down south. I just think that continues to be an issue for the league. So it's one of those things that, yeah, it would be great, but if you're just doing it to do it, I don't know if that's pushing things in the right direction for the whole league as a whole.
Last one to you on this, Taylor.
Yeah, I don't know if they necessarily need it. They can survive without this 10th team. I think they want it. I think a lot of people do want this to survive, but I also do think the CFL does have other problems that might be bigger. And if you put a team out in Atlantic Canada, they need to be competitive in the first year, 2, 3 years. If there's not a competitive team out there, then you're going to lose a lot of that buzz and a lot of that buy-in that fans had right away. So, we talk about the quarterback problem in the CFL and where are the young quarterbacks coming from and who's the next one, right? Obviously, Dustin Crum looked good, but who would go out there and play and put together a bunch of wins, right? So, I mean, I think there's hesitancy because of that, because the talent pool might be a little bit thin, and what players would play out there and make this team a competitive team, and how would they deal with that sort of expansion draft style of format to get a competitive team out there. So I think there's a little bit of hesitancy with that as well in terms of the different levels of the CFL and the ownership, obviously. So I don't know if they need it. I don't necessarily think it'll happen in the next few years, just because it's taken so long for it to not happen that I don't think there's too much urgency on it right now.
Mike, it's funny you said that. Just I have to throw this to you. Like, when you were talking about players actually talking about Halifax when you were in the locker room, was that seen as a plus or a minus?
Plus for people that have been out there into Halifax and have enjoyed their time in Halifax. I think anybody else, a lot of the Americans that come up here, most of them that I talk to have not even been to Canada before. So at this point, it's okay, you know what, I'm coming up here and I'm going to wherever it might be. It doesn't matter. I'm going to play football. So if you were to just add Halifax into that mix or somewhere out east, it's just, for the American guys, it's just going to be another place to go play football. For the Canadians, I think it was just exciting to see that league grow, right? See what, we're all used to. But yeah, it was just kind of joking around on, who would be over there. But I felt like it was a little more real at that time than it is now.
You know what, guys? There was some conversation on ESPN that I was hearing about the running backs in the National Football League. They're looking to form a union, and which I thought was hilarious. I'm like, is this a joke or whatever? But then you read a little deeper, and this is serious. And the players, at least the tailbacks, fullbacks in the NFL, they feel like the trend in the NFL is going away from them. They're not getting paid what they used to. And they're just not the premier players on offense anymore. Do you see this happening, Taylor, happening in the Canadian game where the running back becomes kind of the non-feature on offense like it used to be?
Yeah, I think we're certainly, and it's been a few years now where they're trending away from that bell cow back that's getting 20 to 30 carries a game, right? I don't know the last time. There's been obviously a few teams when they've had the lead and hey, let's just run the ball down their throat and let's do that this season with their feature back. I mean, the Riders did that with Jamal Morrow earlier in the season, but I still think that it is trending in the wrong way for that running back talent pool. And I don't know why more CFL teams don't go with the Canadian at that spot to really flip the ratio, because certainly they're just like you see how good AJ Ouellette, Brady Oliveira, see how good those players are. There's lots of good Canadian talent at running back across the country. You see it in U Sports all the time. So I don't know why more teams aren't going with that Canadian, because I think then you could justify it to have a ratio breaker on your offense, put an American elsewhere, to whether it's along the offensive line or in the defense. Even at receiver, you can have an extra receiver that would be American, because there is a lot of good talent. And I don't think the drop-off would be that far to have a Canadian guy. And then if we think about it, they are worth it to have a Canadian starting at running back, because it does flip the ratio a little bit as opposed to having an American.
Matt, I know Kadeem Carey is hurt right now, and he was definitely one of the premier guys in the league. But, do we not have to go back to of John Cornish to say that, a great Canadian running back playing on a regular snap basis, is that where we have to go back to?
For the Stamps, for sure. I think of John Cornish. I think of Andrew Harris, obviously in Toronto now, but for the longest time in Winnipeg was that type of guy. I think the Stampeders, if Kadeem Carey had been healthy after week 1, would be one of those teams that ideally are getting him 25-ish touches, whether it's 15 rushes and 10 times you're trying to catch him out of the backfield or something along those lines. But you just don't have the same type of guys at the very top of their game. I feel like each team kind of has one. You look around the league, in BC maybe not so much with their backfield, but Jamal Morrow has been great in Saskatchewan. You mentioned Oliveira, you mentioned AJ Ouellette. There's a couple of guys around the league that have that kind of bell cow persona to them, but we just haven't seen it used as much. And obviously the 3-down game kind of lends to it as well. If you don't have confidence in your run game going out and getting you 3-4 yards at least on first down, then why would you bother doing it? You may as well just pass the ball and it's going to end up the same way. It's exactly what we saw with the Stamps against the Redblacks over this weekend with Dedrick Mills. They knew they weren't going to get a lot of traction there because Ottawa stops the run incredibly well, so they barely even did it. And Jake Mayer threw for 450 yards. But you just don't see guys in the league that can come in and just impact the game every single week. John Cornish was that. Harris was that. There's a handful of guys around the league that can do that. But even then, William Stanback was one of those guys. And this year, he's having a solid season. But is he someone that you have to completely build your game plan around? No. It's probably going to be Austin Mack. It's probably going to be Fajardo. It's going to be other guys across that offense. So I just think it's kind of the way that the game is going. CFL's always been a pass-first league. And even now, if you have a running back that can't catch the ball out of the backfield, coaches are going to be a little bit more hesitant to throw you out for every down and expect you to not only go out there, but be able to produce 4 or 5 yards, positive plays every time that you're getting the ball.
Mike, I think I haven't seen the updated, it hasn't come out yet, the updated statistics for after this week. for the league for this whole entire season. I believe Dustin Crum is the leading rusher in the Canadian Football League. What does that tell us?
Well, it just tells you they're not going to hand the ball off to the running back because it's 3-down football, right? They're gonna give their quarterbacks some of those better chances to get explosive plays. And when you go back to the bell cow running backs, right? Even like a James Butler and Hamilton, for what I'm used to is, you'd never see those running backs that get the ball because, number one, they just get tired during the game as well. It's a play-by-play fatigue thing, right? So you almost need to be two guys deep, and if you hand the ball off 4 or 5 times in a row, that guy's going to be exhausted. So you just don't have those type of guys. So you have to kind of go back and forth, and then to compare it to when you talk about the NFL and everything that's going on with the running backs there. In the CFL, it just won't happen because the contracts aren't long enough, right? There's no guarantee with the contract, so there's not going to be these big-time arguments for having a running back around a long period of time, right? They're going to pay a guy to come in 1-2 years. When he gets tired and he's out of there, it's a new guy coming in, right? And there's just not these 6-7 year contracts that you see. So I don't think the CFL will run into that problem, and they'll always err on the side of throwing the ball before they hand the ball off 30 times to a running back.
Is that what's going to happen? I mean, is that the Ryder situation? I mean, there's been some outstanding. I mean, going George Reed. I mean, obviously you go way back, but there's been some really outstanding running backs that have worn the green. That have worn green. Is it turning into a plug and play? Say over the last 5-10 years, Taylor?
Well, I will say to your first point, the stats are broken, so I think that's our biggest problem before we talk about the running back situation in the CFL. The fact that we don't have stats and we can't get the updated stats in week 8 or whatever it is one thing. But I'll leave it at that. Yeah. I don't want to complain too much about that. But I think I think the old phrase is running backs are a dime a dozen. I think it's been said before, north of the border, south of the border. There are exceptions to that rule. And I think you still need a good running game, especially to keep the defense honest. You see a lot of RPO, run-pass option plays where you have to, as a defense, I think you have to expect that the running back could get the ball. So if Dustin Crum wants to build some of that more RPO plays into his offense, you have to keep the defense honest because, I would say the quarterback's going to keep the ball when it's a guy like that more often than not. But if you have a good running back and it forces the defense to be honest, you can give it to him and break off for a big play. So I think the running back position is still important just in terms of where the money maybe needs to be spent in terms of having that premier back is definitely shifting away from putting all the dollars there.
Taylor and Mike, I know you think of a coach that was in both of these markets, a guy like Kent Austin. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. Like, these guys wanted to throw the upfield the football and go vertical at all the time, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, and we had one of the better ones of CJ Gable, and it was still, you know what, let's go for the end zone right now. And I think because you get up here and everybody gets excited about the 3 down, the field so wide, they have these plays that work, and they're designed to get this guy open and this guy open and this guy open. But going back to Taylor's point, you need a good running game because if you look at the Grey Cup champs time and time again, they're usually the ones with a really good running game, right? You look at Winnipeg when they were doing really well, it's because of Andrew Harris, like Matt was saying, right? It's just these teams need a good running back. And I think that's a lot of why the Argos are having success this year, right? Because AJ Ouellette is so effective. And you do see a difference with AJ Ouellette in the game and then an Andrew Harris coming in the game. There is a significant difference in the effectiveness. So when you look at, having a real high quality back like AJ Ouellette this year, right? And Andrew Harris is older, I understand that, but there is a significant difference, and I do think that's why, teams are better than others, and the ones that usually end up winning the Grey Cup are the ones that can run the ball.
It's incredible because you're right. The undefeated teams right now, or the lone undefeated team in the league right now, has running backs that are producing right now. Yet, like I said, it's kind of plug and play in so many markets, even in there, because they've got. I mean, I could be wrong here. Ouellette and Harris are kind of the same guys, don't you think? Kind of, Mike.
Yeah, I think so. I just think it's age and joints feeling, how they feel like when he wakes up in the morning, the difference between the two. I honestly think that's it. I think it's just AJ has a little bit more tread on those tires at this point because Andrew's run him almost into the ground. But you just do see the difference of effectiveness when one is in the game versus the other.
Spot
just
quiz.
save Harris for when he's knocking on the door of the end zone and he can see that carrot at the end of the rope, right?
Right.
And that's when he's able to get that thing into full gear.
Yeah, warm those knees up right before that rep and get on in there.
Well, Taylor, you think about it. There was a time where you were down at the 1 yard line or the 2 yard line, and you gave the ball to your running back. Now, at least 50% of the time, if not more, it's going to that second or third string quarterback.
Yeah, I would say it's more often than not, going to be a quarterback design play. And let's even go back a little bit farther. It used to be a fullback. You used to have I'll call it Chris Zarka in Saskatchewan type of player who would just be this big bruising fullback. You'd hand it off inside to him and let him fall forward that 1 yard. It's certainly going away from that big bruising back. Although Ottawa did it on Sunday with Litre getting into the end zone a couple of times from the 1 yard line. So that was sort of an anomaly in that trend of not having your quarterback rush it in. So, it's certainly gone away from that in the last few years.
A little pop quiz here, and Mike, you might have the advantage on that, obviously, because you're in the Hamilton market. Can you name me the last Tiger Cat to run for 1,000 yards? Which has happened in Saskatchewan multiple times, and has happened in Calgary multiple times. Can you name me the last running back, guys, to run for 1,000 yards wearing black and gold?
I have no idea, but my best guess will be CJ.
Even before CJ Gable, right? I mean,
that is sad.
I'll bring up a name, DeAndre Cobb.
Oh, wow.
The last guy to run for 1,000 yards in a Tiger Cats uniform. I mean, that's going back. We're going back to Kevin Glenn days, for crying out loud. It's insane that just hasn't been a part, at least, of the Hamilton offense. It's nuts. All right, guys.
The other thing
again
now is we love the summer weather, but it's going to start getting cold, and you got to start relying on the run game once it starts, dropping below zero.
And that's a great point. That's where you made your money in the CFL, is certainly in the early part of the season, because the passing game's still getting used. But in that, if you're in Winnipeg, you got to hand off that ball. Strange.
Yeah, absolutely. It's once it gets cold, those the nice wide open passing attacks don't work as well, right? If it gets a little bit slippery on that field, you think receivers are running crisp routes? Absolutely not. It gears to the side of the defense. So, Matt, great point, right? Because we didn't bring it up, but that's exactly right. And, maybe that's why those teams are the ones that end up winning the Grey Cup, because that's the footing and the weather that you're playing in.
Yeah,
Trevor Harris actually said earlier this year when talking to him, he said, you go back how many ever years, and we'll have to look into it, there has never been a Grey Cup winning team without a good feature back, whether that's a 1,000-yard guy or a guy that has success along the ground. There hasn't been a Grey Cup winning team without a star sort of running back or a team that can at least run the ball. Like we said, going back to the John Cornish days in Calgary, right? There's always been, year after year, there's always been a guy, even in the last few years, Toronto, Winnipeg, right? There's always been a guy or two guys that can run the ball on the ground that have won the Grey Cup.
Well, I think after this, after us four talking about, there might be talk of a union starting in the CFL between the running backs. So we started it right here.
All right, guys. Next week, their whole round of games again. They're pretty good again. We've had some really good matchups in the last 2 to 3 weeks. I think they've certainly got something going here. Okay, Hamilton at Ottawa, the Touchdown Atlantic. BC, which is, I guess, Toronto. I guess it's Toronto's the home team, but it's Saskatchewan at Toronto. BC at Edmonton. Calgary at Montreal. Matt, your game of the week is?
I'm going to go with Touchdown Atlantic, just given the location. I think anytime the Argos are on TV right now, you probably got to watch them. Obviously, in our market, we're going to keep a close eye on the Stampeders as they try and get this thing righted. But for me, Touchdown Atlantic, what's the crowd going to be like? What's Chad Kelly got in the bag? Those are going to be the things that I'm watching for this weekend.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm going to be biased on this one, but it's going to be Hamilton, Ottawa, because I want to see if Dustin Crum can keep it up. And Hamilton's in a tough spot right now. We're talking about bell cow running back. We're going to have to see how well James Butler can do and make that offense get going forward.
Taylor?
Yeah, you know what? I think all the games have a little bit of intrigue. I don't know if we're going to see the games that we've seen week 6, 2 weeks ago was just incredible with the finishes that we had. And last week, obviously, with Ottawa. So I will be interested to see what Dustin Crum can do in his third start in Ottawa. Of course, the Riders and Argos, the Riders are going to be huge underdogs in that game, especially heading out east that far. Coming from Vancouver, they're going to be home in Saskatchewan for a few days, and then they got to go to the other side of the country with an unproven quarterback against an undefeated team. So that's really the Riders might be the biggest underdog. I don't know if what the Edmonton line will be, but I'll say touchdown Atlantic will be the game of the week this week for the CFL.
Taylor, what's the feeling on Mason Fine? I thought he played pretty well. I mean, I don't think he hurt the Riders this week.
Well, they only put up nine points, didn't get in the end zone, obviously, so you're not going to win too many games when you only score 9 points and don't score a touchdown. But I think they're, like I said earlier, they're being patient with him. He's not going to be a Dustin Crum right out of the way and be this unbelievable quarterback. I think he has something to work with, and the Riders think obviously they've kept him up in the CFL and handed him the starting quarterback because they believe he can play. He's shown in college he can play. So I think they're going to be patient with him at least for a few more weeks. They have Toronto this week, and then they have Ottawa next week. So the leash is long, but if it's loss after loss after loss in the next 3 weeks, I think you might have to look elsewhere because, like I said, the head coach and the GM are on expiring contracts. They don't have a lot of longevity in their contract to be like, okay, we're going to go through the growing pains of having a young quarterback and whether they're not, I think personally that they should be given extensions or they should be allowed to have a leash to have a young quarterback develop because that's where the next ones are found, right? It's not, you've had 3 games, you've lost all 3, all right, you're done. Your CFL career is basically over. You got to be in like an Edmonton situation where you develop Cornelius, even give the reins to Jake Meyer and say, hey, we're going to go through the growing pains in Calgary, and he's eventually going to be a good quarterback and throw for 400 yards. So it's a weird predicament because the head coach and GM are on expiring contracts, and you have a young quarterback, which might make the leash a little bit shorter. But I think they will be a little bit patient with Mason Fine.
And they have not ruled out Trevor Harris. Or
technically, they haven't ruled him out. They haven't ruled him out for the end of the season. I mean, he's not going to be. He's going to be off his feet for 6 weeks. So that takes us to week 13 before he's even starting a bit of rehab. And then, if he can get back, maybe for the playoffs. But would you put a guy in at the playoffs at that point? Probably not. So maybe he'll practice by the last couple of weeks of the season. But all signs point to him not really coming back this year. Although they haven't ruled it out, so you never know.
Right. Now, Matt, I know there was a missed season in there, but I believe this is the first time Calgary's going to Montreal since like 2019 or 2018, like first time in 3 or 4 years.
Perhaps. I know that historically they have not played well in Montreal, for whatever reason, be it the nightlife. I know the last time that they went there, they limited their pre-game stay in Montreal as best that they could. So I think that's probably going to be the biggest thing for them. Just try and you got a team coming out of a bye here. You faced Cody Fajardo a million times as a member of the Riders, and now you get him as a member of Montreal. And man, this is just a team that needs something good to happen to them. So going out to Montreal, it's definitely not just the free spot on the bingo card, but it should be a good trip out there for them for sure.
This is you're looking at what's going on in the West. I mean, this is kind of a really important game for the Stamps. Like I don't feel like they haven't played poorly, but their record right now is not good.
Close isn't cutting it for them, right? Like they've been you go back to the Winnipeg game, they were that close. Like that Saskatchewan game should have never been that close, but it ended up being that close. You're close to this Ottawa game. You give up the 6 points and then the 2-point convert to Dustin Crum and the Redblacks to let that one slip away. Still haven't won at home, and man, you just want to feel good going home to face the Toronto Argonauts the week after. So it's a tough go for this team right now. It's gotten to the point where, and this is kind of rare for my time covering the Stampeders, you have to start paying attention to the East, and the crossover is certainly relevant. So this little stretch of games, Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, can't sleepwalk through them. There's no room for error already in the season, and it's something that certainly the Stampeders and their staff aren't used to. Like, we were talking about it on our show a little bit today. They just don't have the swagger, the confidence that you were used to when Bo Levi Mitchell was running this team. Like, it's not the same. And that very well could just be the fact that nobody really has the same personality as Bo Levi Mitchell, but you got to find a way to build that confidence somehow, and it's been tough so far this year.
You know, Mike, on the post-game show after the loss to the Argonauts, I listed down to our panel, you know, being the likes of your former teammates and Fan Twos and Tucker and RJ Broadhead. Like, the list of guys that are on that have been on that 6-game injury list for some time now, which include Bo Levi Mitchell. Like, the Ticats got to get healthy. No disrespect to Taylor Powell and his story, but I feel like there's a reason why there's a one quarterback, a second-team quarterback, and a third-team quarterback.
Yeah, and, you know, in the CFL, you need 2 quarterbacks to be able to win long-term over the season, because it's bound to happen that the first quarterback's going to get hurt. You need a second one to be able to step in at some point, whether it's a serious injury, not a serious injury. But to go to your third quarterback, that's tough, right? Because usually your third quarterback's a developmental quarterback where you're just trying to give them time, let them learn the CFL game and not actually have to go into the game ever, right? And that's where Powell is right now. But yeah, the Ticats are in a tough spot, because you look at guys like even Dylan Wynn, right? He's been out for a while, and people kind of forget how dominant of a player he was, right? So on that defensive line, you're looking at Dylan, like, it's too many guys that are building up time and time again for the Ticats, and you know, they're feeling the pressure over there because they need to start winning fast. They keep seeing Ottawa pull out these wins. They keep seeing the East, you know, the Argos doing well. And like Matt, like you said, the first time in forever that the East is actually like the better of the divisions, right? When you look across the board, and there's no longer this time where you can sit there and say, we can lose 6 games and still be able to make playoffs. It's, oh no, now we're a third into the season and we really should start turning it on. So it's going to be tough with Powell back there, but like I said, it's kind of the James Butler show on offense, and then maybe a couple bombs to Tim or Duke, but that's kind of where they have to go with this. And that defense needs to keep stepping up like they have been, getting a couple turnovers, but it's tough sledding when you're on your third quarterback trying to keep up with the East.
Yeah, well, Tim White, I believe 1 catch in his last 3 games. That somehow doesn't make sense. It can't
be doing that with a third string. You have to help him out, right? You have to be able to get open and make those throws easy for him. So they got a lot of internal looking to do in terms of how they're going to be playing, but I mean, it's not going to get any easier for them.
Well, I checked the stats here, but I do believe the East Division right now are leading the West right now in head-to-head encounters, but I'm not quite sure on that. But I'm pretty sure the East are leading, but again, we won't go there. Guys, you guys have been spectacular, fantastic, talking about the relevant topics of what we've gone over, the league this so far, what we saw last week, this week again. Outstanding as always, and much appreciate your time and your interest in what we're doing here on this show. Matt, great first appearance. If guys want to throw, or men or women or fans of the CFL want to throw an opinion to you, where do they find you?
You can find me on social media at Matt Rose YYC. The show we do, this silly little program in the mornings, is called The Big Show with Russick and Rose, and you can find that on all of your favorite podcatchers, or 6 to 9 a.m. here in beautiful Calgary.
Yeah, Russick, is he still in love with Djokovic? Like, what's going on with him and Djokovic?
Oh, yeah. I was away during Wimbledon, but I would have really liked to be here to wallow in his sadness after Novak Djokovic lost to Alcaraz there in the final. But unfortunately, I was away on vacation, and now George is away, so I actually haven't seen him in like 3 weeks. But I'm sure he's still all sorts of tied up about it, for sure.
No, tell him we miss him out here in the Fan 590. I mean, he certainly was a wonderful broadcaster. Taylor, where do we find you out in Regina?
You can reach me on Twitter, Taylor_Shire, and read all of our stuff. Leaderpost.com. We'll have lots of rider content this week before they head out east to Halifax.
Loving the content. And Mr. Daly, are you on social media?
Yeah. You can reach out and debate me anything you want on football. At Daily News 8 That's on Twitter. So shout out your questions, whatever you want to talk about football-wise, I'll debate with you. And then also every game day morning on the Ticats audio network, me and my old teammate Courtney Stephen breaking down the Ticats game before they play. So check it out.
You guys are doing an outstanding job, by the way. Your chemistry is fantastic. And you can tell you guys used to be teammates, that's for sure. Great stuff.
Yeah. When you sit beside somebody for 6 or 7 years in the same meeting room, it just kind of flows.
Are you still doing the youth sports thing this year?
Yeah, coaching at Wilfrid Laurier. So we open up training camp mid-August. So
You
time
coaching
to take down the Western Mustangs. That's who we got to beat this year.
Yeah, please, just silence Marshall once and for all. I mean,
I will.
I think everyone around the country's fed up with the purple, for crying out loud. All right, guys, thank you so much again. And to our viewers and listeners, thank you so much. You know where to find us once a week on the Ticats Audio Network. We're talking about the relevant stuff in the CFL. And again, another outstanding set of guests that we've had. So, again, Podcast Catcher, find us. You can get us on YouTube, everywhere you want. And again, it's coming to you once a week because we love this 3-down game. My name's Bubba O'Neil, the host of the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network.